relative identity form alters classical logic.
Okay.
So whether
You
it's
don't. Okay.
Griffiths or Geaches, it doesn't matter. It doesn't alter classical logic.
Oh, brother. Okay. Then I'm asking you again, would you agree, and I'm asking you this specifically, I'm not asking for anything outside of this, would you agree that relative identity would be two things can be identical insofar as X but distinct insofar as Y? I'm just asking you, is that relative identity? And if not, can you present an alternative?
Okay, relative identity isn't just saying there's an X that is distinct from Y. And it's not all
It's not what I said.
it's also not saying that there or relative identity isn't just that you have X and Y that are identical, which are equivalent in some class and not in another. It's not just that. Relative
Okay, so what
identity
is relative
is dealing with
identity?
the identity operator. It's when you have either a syntactic addition to the identity operator, meaning you have primitive identity as what you know as absolute, and then you just add another one, or you have a different semantic interpretation of the identity operator such that you have sortal classes. It's not just we're identical relative to person and not relative to human or something. That's not.
No, that's not what I posited. But you do disagree with the definition of relative identity that I gave, correct?
The definition of relative identity that you gave is compatible with with equivalent classes without identity altogether. So yes, I disagree with that.
Wait, sorry, repeat that? I was reading side chat.
Okay, you can have all identity relations assume equivalence relations, but not
Okay.
all equivalence relations assume identity relations.
Okay.
So your definition was compatible with just having a bare equivalence relation, where you have some equivalence
Yeah,
relation
somewhat. Okay.
you define it with a predicate saying they're the same God, and you have another equivalence relation, you define it not the same person, and then the equivalence relations aren't transitive because nothing about just pure predicates force you into transitivity or any of this equivalence.
That's not what I said relative identity was. What?
I didn't say that's what you said relative identity
But
was. I said the
I
definition
asked
of
you,
relative identity.
I asked you, what is the issue with my definition, and can you posit an alternative definition? Those were my two questions.
Okay. I did both. You just weren't listening. The first
Uh,
answer to your first question, what's the issue with your definition of relative identity? Your definition of relative identity is completely compatible with just having equivalence relations without identity entirely.
what is
That's the issue.
identity?
Identity is an operator in logic, formal logic, which, which has
Why are
equivalence
you talking at
relations.
like 10 words per minute, bro? Please, like, please.
Because I have to talk slowly for you because you don't understand these things.
No, I do
Apparently.
understand. You can speak as fast as you'd like. I don't mind. Go ahead though. Because
Okay,
it is 9 in the
when you
morning. I
have
just woke up.
when you have identity, there's you have primitive identity, and then you can have in higher ordered logics, you can have semantic interpretations of identity. So in primitive
Okay.
identity, it's not defined, it's not interpreted, it's just understood by its function, and that's where you have axioms that govern identity, like the axiom schema in FOL, like Leibniz's law, it governs how it functions, it doesn't define it.
Okay.
In relative identity, it doesn't alter classical logic because you can have classical logic like people have FOL without identity entirely. So you can just add an extra operator in syntax, or in the higher ordered logics, like in SOL, you can have a different semantic interpretation of the operator itself, which is what most people today do when they're referring to relative identity.
Okay. So just to get back to the initial topic, which was, I guess, I'm not sure, you had a contention with something that I said in an article that I wrote. I'm not too sure. I mean, I was tagged in that. So the contention was me saying that relative identity contradicts classical identity. Or sorry, I said classical logic. But when I said classical logic, I was referring specifically to classical identity, and I understand classical identity to be Leibniz's law. I believe that Leibniz's law would be a biconditional that satisfies absolute identity. I believe that anything which is a negation of absolute identity would be a contradiction to classical logic. So that's what
Leibniz's
I meant
law.
by saying this. So is
Okay,
there a contention
slow
with...
down. Are
Wait,
you
hold on.
saying
So
having different semantic interpretations of the identity operator is an alteration of classical logic?
repeat the question?
Having different semantic interpretations of the identity operator, you're saying that's an alteration of classical logic?
I don't believe that this is an issue of different quote unquote semantic understandings or whatever it may be. No, I believe that they are inherently different. I believe that classical identity and relative identity are inherently different.
Okay, I'm telling you that the most popular way that relative identity is expressed is just taking a different semantic interpretation of the identity operator. What about that is contradicting classical logic?
Okay, okay, 1 second. So you presented an alternative according to an alternative form of relative identity contradictory to what I presented. So I'm
No,
asking
both
you this.
forms of relative identity do not contradict classical logic. Even if you take Geach's view, which is altering or adding an additional identity operator, how does that not, or how does that
Okay,
contradict
wait,
classical logic?
1 second. Then I'll ask you this. The way that I defined relative identity to you, do you believe, and I'm specifically speaking with regards to the way that I defined it, not an alternative definition that you are positing, do you
I'm
agree
referring
that
to
the
the literature.
definition that I posited, wait 1 second, yeah, my definition does come from literature,
Okay,
but
who?
would you agree, wait 1 second, would you
Which,
agree that
which
I'm
philosopher?
speaking, would you agree that the definition which I posited would contradict classical identity? And when I say classical identity, I'm referring to absolute identity.
No,
Would this contradict it?
definition no,
I'm
because the
asking you,
definition
I'm
you
asking you.
posited is, I'm explaining to you. It
Go ahead.
wouldn't, because the definition you provided doesn't even require that you use the identity operator at all. You can just use
Okay.
equivalence classes, which is
Okay.
completely all in FOL.
The way that I am wording here, relative identity, is that two things can be identical insofar as X and distinct insofar as Y. Absolute identity states that if it's going to be the case that two things are identical, they must necessarily share all of the same predicates and properties. Are these two things not contradictory? Yes or no?
Okay, the first one,
Yeah,
when you
yes or
say,
no. It's a true dichotomy. Yes or no?
okay, I'm trying to explain it to you, because if what you mean by it's a true dichotomy is that you've accurately described one option that it exhausts all other options, then I disagree that it's a true dichotomy, because you didn't accurately
Oh,
describe anything.
oh my God.
You don't understand what you're saying, and you're trying to, oh my God.
You don't understand what I'm saying. I asked you with the
You said you're
two, well,
referring
hold
to
on 1 second. The
someone's view
two
in the
things,
literature.
1 second, 1 second, I'm speaking. Please have some respect. When I say, sorry? Oh, never mind. Sorry. I thought somebody was knocking on my door. When I said that I understand relative identity to be two things can be identical insofar as X and distinct insofar as Y, and then I said that absolute identity is that if two things are identical, they must necessarily share every single predicate and property. I'm asking you, in accordance to these two definitions, do they contradict one another or can they exist simultaneously? That's all I'm
They can
asking
exist
you.
simultaneously.
You believe me saying that in order for two things to be identical, they must share every single predicate and property, and then me saying if two things are relatively identical or identical, they can share one property and not share another. You think that these two things can simultaneously be the case?
Yes.
All right, bruv. You got it, man. You got it. You
Okay.
got it. What was the other contention that you had with my article?
You have no clue what you're saying. You don't even want to hear a
You
response.
just told me, no, you just told me that me saying that two things are identical insofar as every single property and two things are identical insofar as one property but distinct insofar as the other can both be the case simultaneously. So what was your next contention? Because that's the most insane thing I've ever heard in my life.
Well, that's
So what's the
because
next thing?
you don't
Yes,
know
what's
anything
the...
about logic.
Oh,
Do
brother. Oh
you want
my
to hear
goodness.
a
You
reply?
read my article. Hold on. You read my article. You
Okay,
read the first
let me speak.
paragraph
Can I speak? Don't be
where I
rude. You told
specified
me not to
I'm
be
not
rude
being
earlier. Let
rude.
me speak.
You
Look
posted a
at
whole
let me
story
respond. Don't
on
be
me
rude.
trying... Wait, hold on 1 second. I'm not being
Let me
rude.
respond. Don't be rude. Let
You
me respond.
posted an entire story
Don't
on an article that
be
I wrote.
rude.
I'm speaking.
Oh, Johannes, can you stop
You
speaking
presented.
and let her go?
Johannes, this
Don't
is exactly why Jake, the Muslim metaphysician, is going to wipe the floor with
okay,
you. So now you're going to let me speak, okay?
let me reply
You
to what
wrote,
you
Damn.
hold
said.
on, you wrote a story on my article that said as follows. Oh, she essentially blah, 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 she misrepresented Christian
Okay, let's stay on the
theology, even
subject.
though I said in the first sentence, brother, hold on, I have a question. What was
Let's
the
go back to
article
the
referring
subject
to?
matter.
Yeah,
Let's
no,
go
no,
back
no.
to
The
the. Stop trying
subject
to run
matter is that
away.
you had
Stop trying to run
contentions with my
away.
article.
Oh
Hold on, one second.
stop
Your
trying to run away.
contention, we joined this VC because you had a contention with an article that I wrote. So now I'm asking you, what's going
Stop
to be the
trying.
next
Let's go back
contention?
to the identity statements you
I'm
were making.
asking you, what's your next contention? Because you just
Okay,
told
look,
me
I'm
in
gonna
front of
stop being. I'm
everybody
gonna
in this
reply to what
VC,
you said.
one second, you just told me in front of everybody in this VC
Oh
that
my God, look
two
at this
things,
girl walk.
wait one second, I'm speaking. Please have some respect. You
Oh,
told me in
please have
front of
some respect. Let
everybody
me
in this
respond to what you
VC,
said. What are you talking about?
brother, there's nothing to respond to. You already conceded. Move on to the next point.
I conceded to
Because
what?
you also had an issue
I conceded to
with
what?
you told me this is such an insane thing for you to say, by the way. You said that there's no issue with accepting simultaneously absolute identity and relative identity in the way that I defined them, which was if X and Y are identical, X and Y share all of the same predicates and properties, and a relative identity being if X and Y are identical, then X and Y can share. They can be identical insofar as X property, but distinct insofar as Y. You said that these two things don't contradict one another. I'm
No,
not
they
engaging
don't.
with somebody
They
that
don't.
says something so
They
so
don't contradict
intellectually
each other.
dishonest.
They don't
Bro,
contradict
why
each
would I?
other, and
This is so
that's the very
intellectually
reason.
dishonest. Are you kidding me?
Okay, stop talking for a second. Don't be rude. The reason,
No.
the
I'm
reason,
telling you to move
stop
on to the next
talking.
contention because I'm not going
He
further
doesn't
on
want to
this.
hear the
You
response.
just told me
My goodness.
one second.
Do
I'm
you know
not
that
going
you know
further
why
on this because you
people
just
try to
told
argue that
me
qualitative
that
identity
absolute identity as in the way that I defined it and relative identity in the way that I defined it, there's no issue with
act like
accepting
a
both of them
normal person.
simultaneously.
Act like a normal person. Let me respond. It'll take 2 seconds.
Brother, are you
It'll take
kidding
2
me?
seconds. Calm down. It'll take
Okay,
two.
you can respond.
You'll
Go
be
ahead. And then
okay.
we're gonna move
You'll
on
be
to the
okay.
next. Oh, wait one second. Okay,
You'll be
calm down.
okay.
Are you okay?
You'll be
Calm
okay.
down. Calm down.
You'll,
Calm down.
inshallah, you'll
Calm
be okay.
down. It's all right.
Let me explain,
It's
okay?
okay.
Just 2 minutes. Just 2 minutes.
Inshallah, yeah. So one
Give me
second.
2
Wait,
minutes.
let's
Okay.
wait one
Okay.
second. I'm gonna address the next thing
All
that
of
you
this
said in
is
your article.
awful.
Oh my
Can you let
one
her
Don't be scared.
clarify
Let me
and
Oh
stop
my
respond.
goodness.
screaming?
I joined this VC because
There's no
somebody tagged me.
clarification. She's saying she wants to go to a different
Yeah,
point. How's
she's
that
gonna
Yeah, she wants
clarification?
to
clarify
Wait
she
what
wants
one
to
she's.
move
second.
Yeah,
topic.
One second.
we don't
Okay,
There's
need you to tell
let
literally
me
her
no.
no.
Wait one
reply.
second. I hope
Let me
you
reply.
realize there's nothing to reply to. I don't care. I really don't care.
Okay,
I'm
look.
gonna respond to the next thing that you said in your story.
Liveness. Look at
Oh
she's
my
panicking.
goodness,
She's
man.
panicking.
Nigga,
Oh
let
my
her
goodness.
talk, nigga.
Oh, okay, don't
Okay, look.
say that shit, bro. Don't say that shit. But
Okay,
listen, let's
so there's a
respond to the
reason
next thing you
why.
said in the
Oh
story.
my
One second.
goodness.
There's
Oh my
okay, listen.
goodness.
Are there not okay, there's two
Look at.
points that you made. I was tagged in
Oh
this.
my
There was two
goodness.
points that you made, and I'm gonna respond to both of them. So first
Oh
off, I have a question. You said I
my
wrote my wait, you
God.
said you
Stay
read
on
my article,
topic,
correct?
please. Let me respond
You
to them.
said you read my article, correct?
Yeah, okay, look it. We can talk about whatever you want after I respond and show you why you're wrong. Okay.
Go
It'll
ahead.
take 1 minute. 1 minute.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
Saying if X and Y are identical if they share all properties doesn't exclude the expression that X and Y can share Y property and still be identical. That doesn't exclude that because that's not defining the identity operator. That's why when people argue against relative identity, one of the most common objections is that relative identity just reduces to qualitative sameness. If you know what qualitative sameness is, it's just saying X and Y share Z property or whatever it is, or they're identical in few respect. So Leibniz's law doesn't exclude the possibility of separating equivalence classes in any way. It doesn't stop the possibility of picking out a single predicate in which X and Y are the same. It doesn't do any of that. But that's what your definition of relative identity was just that X and Y are identical qua Z or whatever. They're identical relative to whatever, which when you say identical, your definition didn't specify whether that was even using the identity operator. And you didn't even use because the language in FOL, when you say something's identical or the same, that itself doesn't specify whether something is a predicate, because you can have sortal predicates and you can have what looks like the identity operator as a predicate. And that doesn't specify for us which one you're using, and you didn't do any of that. But you don't know what any of this means, so it's okay.
Okay, don't rhetoric, Max. Don't rhetoric, Max. It's okay.
You don't.
All right, you don't need
know.
to rhetoric, Max. It's all
Could
right.
you
Let's move
respond
on
to
to
what
the
he just
next
said?
point. No,
Okay,
I
so the
literally said
response-
I'll
we
let
can't
him
use the
respond.
token.
I'll let
We
him
don't use the
respond.
token.
Listen, unless he
Who's that
taps out, you
Indian
can.
telling me to like shut?
Yeah, you can
Yeah,
shut your
shut your
bitch
ass
ass up.
up.
All right.
Don't
She's so
fuck.
mad.
Don't do too. Your friend is insulting my friend, bro. Get him on a leash.
You just insulted me. You were just interrupting me this entire time.
I
being
insulted
rude.
you? You just said verbatim, I don't understand anything you said, and I insulted you.
Okay, you didn't. That's a fact.
You're insane.
You interrupting me
Okay,
is not
and
some-
you
is
know
not
what?
like
Your friend is a
descriptive
bitch, and that's a
proposition.
fact as well. Your friend is a bitch, and that's a fact as well.
Your friend is a cheerleading.
You listen.
Yeah, okay,
I didn't
do you wanna
understand anything,
respond
and
to
that's a
what I
fact. And your
told you?
friend is a bitch, and that's a fact as well.
Okay, look it. Notice
But
how
anyway,
you're the
just to
only
get
one
back to,
that
I'm
has
gonna
been
respond now.
moving
I'm gonna
away from
respond now.
substance.
Shut up. I'm gonna respond now. Okay.
Okay. Be nice. Be nice.
Brother, you just insulted me personally. What do you mean, be
I
nice?
didn't
Are you cool?
insult. You didn't understand anything I said. You don't know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
that's an insult. That's an
That's
insult.
not an
Don't worry.
insult.
You
That's a
be nice,
description.
guys. Be nice.
It's not normative.
Be
That's a
nice.
description of you.
Now we're gonna move on. We're gonna move on to the next thing that you said in your story. Is that okay with you, or do you have a problem with that?
No, it's not. I want you to respond and tell me how.
I don't. To be honest with you, I don't really
isn't
care what you
sufficient
want. To be
for
real, I don't really
clarifying
care
your-
what you want. To be 100% frank, I don't really care what you want. I was tagged so I could respond to the things that you said in your story. So I'm gonna respond to those, and then I'm gonna go ahead and call somebody else for a couple of minutes because they told me that they need to ask me something, and then I'm gonna come back over here, and then we can discuss whatever you want. Is that okay with you?
I'm sure you'll be back. I'm sure.
But brother, this is the server I chill in like at every single point in time, brother. There's nowhere else I'm gonna be. But